All right, good morning, everyone. This morning, Giri Maharaj and I are discussing the topic, which is the spiritual identity of Sukadeva Goswami, speaker of the Bhagavatam. So I want to give a little bit of a summary before we get into it. There is a story that many of you may have heard, both in India, in the Gaudiya Math itself, in Vrindavan, in the Western Hare Krishna movement. There's a story about Sukadeva Goswami. And we have to pay a little close attention here because the story gets a little complicated in the sense that there's a true part of the story, there's a second true part of the story, which isn't actually related to the first part of the story, and there's a third part of the story, which is a total concoction, and which comes from a particular sector in Vrindavan. So it's a very interesting topic. So on our website, there's an article about this. I forget what it's called. I think we're going to read from that article.
Yeah, Sriya Suka. That's the name of it.
Sriya Suka.
Yeah.
All right. So this involves the spiritual identity of Sukadeva Goswami. And the sum and substance of the story, which has been developing and circulating for well over a decade or two that I'm aware of, is that the spiritual identity of Sukadeva Goswami is that he is the pet parrot of Srimati Radharani. In Vrindavan Leela, Radharani, as well as Krishna, they have many pet animals. And in this case, it is said that Sukadeva Goswami is the pet parrot of Radharani. Krishna also has pet dogs. In fact, he has 2 pet dogs. So peacocks, dogs, monkeys, parrots.
Cats.
Cats also. These animals exist in the spiritual world in Goloka Vrindavan. And there's a list of some of them in Radha Krishna Ganodesh Dipika. I believe, was that Rupa Goswami?
Yes, correct.
By Rupa Goswami, and it is the lamplight that, it is a book illuminating some of the family members and associates of Radha and Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. This takes you to Krishna's uncles, and it's a light read, and it's quite charming. So in there, we do find that Radharani has a pet parrot.
Yeah, Manju Basini. That's the name of the...
Manju Basini.
Yeah.
The name of Radharani's pet parrot. So in this story, which we're going to read, there's a lot of reading today. Giri Maharaj is going to do a bit of reading. We get the whole story, and part 1, part 2, part 3. And we're going to stop at different intervals and discuss this. And there are a couple pictures I'll put up on the screen momentarily as we go along. Right. So the first one begins, Giri, you can go ahead and begin with that narration. I'll put up this one picture.
Sure. One day, Lord Shiva was speaking the Bhagavatam for his wife Parvati to hear. As Shiva spoke in deep rapture, Parvati herself was not so attentive and began to slumber. A parrot, however, was sitting nearby, and he appeared to be listening to Lord Shiva as he spoke. Suddenly, Shiva could see that Parvati had not been listening. Then he understood that the parrot had seemed to have taken it all in. Shiva began to reflect that this ignorant bird had heard the Bhagavatam, but would simply repeat it, as parrots are prone to do, and thus make a mockery of the great message of Bhagavatam. Shiva thus decided to terminate the parrot, at which time the bird took flight in great fear with Shiva in hasty pursuit. The chase was on, and the parrot soon reached the ashram of Vyasadeva, where he flew into the mouth of Vartika, Vyasadev's wife, entering her womb. The parrot was now safe. For 16 years the parrot stayed within the womb of Vartika before taking birth, becoming known as Sukadeva, the son of Vyasa, and eventually as the speaker of the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit.
All right, so many of you may not be aware of that, but there are actually two stories which narrate the origin of Sukadeva Goswami. And we'll explain more of that, or Srila Bhakti Siddhanta will explain more of that as we read on. But in our Kalpa, the Sukadeva Goswami that we are aware of, who speaks the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit, was a parrot and flew into the mouth of the wife of Vyasadeva, and after 16 years took his birth and then ran off into the forest to return later on and learn the Bhagavatam from his father, and then a time later after that to speak the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit. So now there's another, now we begin the part two. So that part one is true, and this is the story that's floating around. Lord Shiva is speaking the Bhagavatam to Parvati. She's in slumber. It's being heard by a parrot. Parrots just quack. They talk, and so Lord Shiva is thinking, oh, this parrot's just going to speak the Bhagavatam, and this will cheapen the whole thing. And this might be noted. Well, we're saying, well, wait a minute. This is Sukadeva Goswami who's coming to speak the Bhagavatam, but Lord Shiva's already speaking the Bhagavatam. So that may appear to be somewhat of a contradiction, but no, it is not. And the Bhagavatam is, as we used to say in some classes, in the heavenly planets, it is some thousands of volumes long, not just the volumes that we have in the cantos that we have, but it is hugely expanded beyond that. Furthermore, the Bhagavatam is eternal scripture, and although it had not yet appeared here on earth, the Bhagavatam was known to Shiva, and ultimately the Bhagavatam means the glorification of Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his pastimes. All right, so now the part two of the story.
So the second part of the story goes as follows. Radha's pet parrot, Shuka, used to sit on her left hand while she would affectionately feed him the seeds from pomegranate fruit. She would pet him affectionately, telling him, "Bolo Krishna, Bolo Krishna." This parrot would then sweetly utter the names of Krishna. One day, that Shuka flew away to Nandagram to Krishna, who was sitting within a kunj with his friend Madhumangal and others. That Shuka sat on a branch of a pomegranate tree, and very sweetly began to utter Krishna's name, Krishna, Krishna. Krishna looked towards the Sukha and was moved. The parrot spoke again. "Oh, I am very wretched and unfortunate. I am kritagna, ungrateful, and don't recognize the good qualities of anyone, for I have left my mistress and have come here." He uttered this in such a pitiable manner that Krishna was both astonished and impressed. He at once took the parrot, who was Srimati Radhika's own, in his hand and began to fondle it. That's the second.
All right, so that's a narration. That's a true narration. Radharani's parrot one day flew off to the kunja of Krishna.
Right.
And Krishna took that parrot in his hand. So, part one, how a parrot heard was in Shiva Loka or wherever Lord Shiva was speaking the Bhagavatam, and then Lord Shiva wanted to kill that parrot. And the parrot flew into the mouth of the wife of Vyasadeva, and later was born as Sukadeva Goswami. All right, that's one part. Now the second part, they're not related. It's simply a true story.
Right.
Where's that narrated, Giri?
The first part is in the Puranas. It's from Brahma-Vivata Purana, Skanda Purana, and Mahabharata. That's mentioned. The second part
Three places. Two Puranas and the Mahabharata. All right.
Yeah. The second part is a narration given by Srila Jiva Goswami in his Ananda Vrindavan Champu.
Right. All right, so both of those are bona fide. Now, we get into the third part of this story.
Mm-hmm. So the third part, which they tag along with the second part, is as follows. After Krishna's manifest Leela ended, by the order of Krishna, the parrot to manifest Bhagavatam remained in this world. Later, he entered into the mouth of Vyasadev's wife and remained for 16 years. This Shuka is Sriya Suka, the Suka of Srimati Radharani.
So, in a casual observance, this all seems to connect.
Mm-hmm.
Parrot, Radharani's parrot. Parrot goes over to Krishna. Krishna tells or speaks to the parrot and decides that this parrot will remain to speak the Bhagavatam, which is also sometimes known as the Radha Bhagavat. And that's another subject, but the Bhagavatam it ultimately sings the glories of Srimati Radharani, Vrindavan Ishwari. So it all seems to fit together. However, it doesn't fit together. Mm-hmm. It doesn't fit together, and it is a concoction. So around 1991 is when I first came in contact with this story. And as I say, it sounded quite charming, but then again I was thinking, oh gee, and someone told me, Srila Sridhara Maharaj, he had spoke on this subject, and I was going through all those 400 or 500 tapes at the time, and I couldn't find the narration. But something was always kind of just chewing on me that this original story, it sounds very nice, and after the but, I didn't know what to say. It was just like, I don't know, but, and nothing clicked. I had no information. So then, I don't know how many years it was later, when we were transcribing all of these tapes, finally someone and the transcribers transcribed the tape that indeed had Sridhar Maharaj's recollection of this story, culminating in what is the spiritual identity of Sukadeva Goswami as having no connection to Krishna Leela whatsoever, but Sukadeva being an example of the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. Now, some people may say, that was Sridhar Maharaj's opinion. There are many opinions. Well, it just so happens that in giving his opinion, he is quoting Bhaktivinoda Thakura. So it's not just Sridhar Maharaj's opinion. And if he's quoting Bhaktivinoda Thakura, and he's speaking it himself, that means in the middle is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, his own guru, and thus that is also the opinion of his own guru. All right, so let's read on and discuss as we go.
Well, there's a conversation that Bhaktisiddhanta had with one Pandit who was asking about the origins of Sukadeva Goswami. So Bhaktisiddhanta only gives two stories. He doesn't mention anything about Sukadeva being the parrot of Radharani. He said there's a conversation with this Shastri, this Pandit, in the Gaudiya magazine from 1928, where Bhaktisiddhanta says, in the Puranas we find two conclusions regarding the appearance of Sukadeva. One story says that he took the form of Shuka from the Arani wood after Vyas saw the naked Apsara Gratachi. The other story says that he was born from the womb of the wife of Vyas. And that's it. He doesn't give any other story besides that.
Two.
Yeah.
And what was that? Here, these two, here some note here. These two very different accounts for an origin of Sukadeva can be understood according to kalpas, kalpa beta. So in one kalpa, in a previous kalpa, Sukadeva manifests from the, what was it, the Agni wood? Or what?
The Arani.
Arani.
It's the wood for starting the fire.
Yes, from the Arani wood. But in this kalpa, he manifests from the womb of Vatika, the wife of Vyasadeva. And how he entered there, we have already discussed. The parrot, quite exceptional. The parrot flew into Vatika's mouth and thusly entered her womb.
Right.
Oh, you want to continue reading there from part 2 of the story?
Part 2 of the story, wherein the pet parrot of Radharani flew to Nandagram and entered the Kunja where Krishna was seated, is cited in the 8th Stavaka of Ananda Vrindavan Champu by Sri Kavi Karnapur. Sorry, I said Jiva Goswami before. It's Kavi Karnapur.
Kavi Karnapur. So part 1 is bona fide. Part 2 of the story is bona fide.
Part 3 of the story, however, wherein Krishna orders the parrot to remain in this world and manifest the Bhagavatam, is not cited in any Shastra or by any previous acharya. Part 3, it seems, is a conjecture. In other words, there is no evidence in literature or in the commentaries of previous acharyas that Sukadeva Goswami in Krishna Leela was the pet parrot of Radharani.
Now, when we finally had the information that cleared up the story, I mean, when everything is simply a lie or a fabrication, it's easy to get to the root of it.
Right.
The problem is when speculations, interpolations, and otherwise just fanciful inventions enter into a true story. So, sometimes it gets harder to sort it out, especially if, like, the bulk of the story is true. Let me give you an example. In the book Advaita Prakash, devotees read that book, and it reads much like Chaitanya Bhagavat. Very sweet, very Gaudiya styled, very sweet, very, very relishable. And there are all these various pastimes mentioned in that book. And then every once in a while, just a single sentence is injected and put into that book. Well, actually, the whole book is a fabrication. But the point is just a couple of sentences are put into that book, and those sentences cut at the very root of our sampradaya. It is a expertly designed terminal literature. And because of its sweetness, devotees say, "Oh, this is really nice. This is really nice. This is really nice." And then someone says, "Oh, so you accept that book?" And then based on, "Oh, yes, it's so sweet. Yes, we accept it." Well, then there is no mantra from worshiping Mahaprabhu. And because there is no mantra for worshiping Mahaprabhu, there cannot be any deity of Mahaprabhu. Thus, Vishnu Priya's deity of Mahaprabhu should be thrown in the Ganga. A equals B equals C.
Yeah.
So, when a story is surrounded with a lot of, let's call it the bona fide sweet taste,
the nectar,
the nectar, but if we're not closely following, I mean, Srila Puri Maharaj stressed, not follow in the footsteps, follow very closely in the footsteps. Prabhupada, our Guru Maharaj, stressed, do not change anything. So this is following in the footsteps very, very closely. But nowadays we live in a world where, wow, somebody really opened the window and the cats got in, the wolves got in, the foxes got in, the weasels got in, the snakes got in. And it's just kind of nonstop every time you turn around. Like this, somebody sends me this article. It says Jesus predicted.
Yeah.
Jesus predicted the appearance of Prabhupada. It's just like...
If you don't laugh,
because you can't understand who Prabhupada was and what Prabhupada actually taught and what Prabhupada came here to represent. You have to invent all these things that Jesus didn't predict Prabhupada. This is just nonsense. They want to say that Srila Prabhupada is the foundation of the Hare Krishna movement. If Jesus would have been predicting Prabhupada, why wouldn't he predict Lord Chaitanya? Mm-hmm. Who's God himself, the father of Jesus, huh? This is just devotees inventing. This is kind of like the Nostradamus, what do they call those things? Quatrains?
Quatrains, yeah.
Quatrains. You can basically read whatever you want to read into Nostradamus. Yep. Oh, by the way, tell him to check that out. He probably predicted Prabhupada also.
Oh, they've already said that already.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Next you'll hear that Muhammad predicted Prabhupada. Yeah, right. All right. So moving on. So we have two parts of that story. Part 1 and 2 are true. Part 3 is the injection. So, Giri Maharaj, you and I, when we went looking, so we printed, we wrote this article, and a certain group of devotees at that time in Vrindavan who had been tremendously influenced by this story, said that for publishing our article and the information that we had, we were called operatis.
Yeah, Maha-aparadis.
No. First it was operatis.
Oh, okay.
And after we, and then once we got into a debate, and we proved them wrong, because they would say, "Oh, you're very wrong. It's there." And what was they saying? Gopal Champu. Was it Gopal Champu?
Ananda Vrindavan Champu.
Ananda Vrindavan Champu. So we crawled through that book 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
There's no mention that Sukadeva Goswami is the parrot of Radharani at all. And so we came back with that, and then they said, "Well, you're just an operati, And, then we said, well, maybe this is the realization of your Guru Maharaj or something. Maybe, well, we wouldn't tell you if it was because you're in Maha-aparati. So,
yeah, you're a demon.
So we became demons and Maha-aparatis.
Then we asked them for evidence. Well, just give us the evidence. Here we're offenders, we're Maha-aparatis, we're demons, whatever you want to call us. Just give us some Shastri evidence. They said, you're not qualified, we're not going to give it to you.
Yeah. But we were qualified to hear from Srila Sridhara Maharaj, and we were qualified to hear the opinion of Bhaktivinoda Thakura. So now we're going to get into that now a little bit.
Yeah.
What was next?
Srila Sridhara Maharaj's statement.
The one that, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, Sukadeva was the great exponent. All right, so now we're going to hear from Srila Sridhara Maharaj directly about the identity of Sukadeva Goswami. So please, don't get to reading too fast, Giri.
Sure.
And everyone, please listen attentively.
Sukadeva was the great exponent of Bhagavatam, but it is not found that he is in the highest position of Krishna Leela. What he is delivering through his mouth, through tongue, so many high things have been transmitted through his tongue, but he may not have his stand in that plane. We don't find that Sukadeva has got his permanent position in Radha Krishna's Leela, or in the Madhuri Ras as a particular Saki also.
All right, so please note that. That's pretty definitive. He's going to go on and explain a little bit more. But we do not find that Sukadeva Goswami, has got a permanent position in Radha Krishna Leela. That means he cannot be the parrot. Radharani's pet parrot has a permanent position. So he is not the parrot. Or in the Madhurya Ras.
Right.
But he's giving the highest literature which has ever been presented to the humankind on planet Earth. And 10th canto culminates, is quite a Madhurya, the Rasa Leela, All these things are there in Srimad Bhagavatam, but he himself has no position. In other words, Sukadeva Goswami is not a Madhurya Ras Bhakta. Now, this point became very interesting too, because this same group of devotees was saying, we are not interested in Prahlad. That was one of their grand statements. And another statement they had made was, Advaita Acharya cannot give Madhurya Prem. He cannot give Brajabhav.
Right.
Advaita Acharya. So we had some separate conversations on that. But what we understood is this group, which is kind of a semi-Sahajiya group, they're not very tuned into philosophy. They cannot follow the dots. Because they're saying Advaita Acharya cannot give Madhurya Prem. But an animal, a parrot, all parrots, all animals, all trees, and all hills like Govardhan in Vrindavan are what? They're Shantaras. So, in one breath, they're eager to dismiss Advaita Acharya. We have no interest in Advaita Acharya. He cannot give Brajabhav. But yet, in another breath, they'll claim that Radharani's parrot, who is Shantaras, becomes Sukadeva Goswami, and he can give Madhurya Ras. He can give Manjari Bhav, even. But he's from the Shantaras section. And then, and to put the crowning kind of cherry on the cake, Madhavinda Puri is listed in Gorganadesh Dipika as the incarnation of a Kalpa Briksha tree. And Madhavinda Puri, and then Radharani speaks through Madhavinda Puri, and Madhurya Ras is then manifest for the first time in any kind of recent history, and distinguishing the Gaudiya-sampradaya from the Madhva-sampradaya, from the Nimbarka, from the Vallabhas, from all other branches Ramanujas, because none of them have this Madhurya Ras. So you have Madhavinda Puri, who's a Shantaras Bhakta, an incarnation of a Kalpa Briksha tree, but Radharani is speaking through him. So in a similar way, this Sukadeva Goswami, he's not the parrot, he's not a Shantaras Bhakta. Nobody knows what kind of Bhakta he is. We'll get into that in a few minutes. Sridhara Maharaj will explain more about that. But he is chosen by Krishna, causeless mercy, and he becomes the speaker of the Bhagavatam, and he delivers the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit and the sages in the forest. But he himself is not in Madhurya Ras, and he has no permanent position in Krishna Leela. So who is Sukadeva Goswami if he's not the parrot of Radharani? So we have Srila Sridhara Maharaj, who kindly, by his infinite grace, will enlighten us according to our parampara. What does that mean? According to his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and his param guru, Bhaktivinoda Thakura. And what's good for his generation must be good for our generation. Otherwise, we're off the track. We're on our own. All right, you want to continue the reading, Giri?
Yes. But that what Sukadeva has given to us through his mouth, that is unfathomable. He is delivering Akunta Medasa. He is going on. These things were coming through him, flowing in a natural way. What he has delivered through his nectarine tongue has no comparison in the world ever, anywhere. But still, he is considered in that way, from the general position of his previous consideration, a Brahmavadi. Jagama Bhikshubhi Sakam. After giving delivery to all these things, he went away along with the beggars to nowhere. He did not care to meet Vyasadeva, his father and guru, nor his father's guru Narada, there in the meeting. He did not care for that. he chose to be unseen. He came from the unseen and entered into it again, an untraceable, solitary life. But there was his guru, Param Guru. He did not care. So he was selected as some machine, loudspeaker, something like that. The inspiration came only to help. That Bhagavata is above Vedanta, above Jnana. The Jnanis and Yogis formed the major portion of the audience, so Shukadev was necessary. Shukamukhat Amrita Dravya Samyutam. To the audience at large, it was proved that Bhagavata is more than this non-differentiatedness, the Nivisheshavad. Shukadev was necessary. That must come from him. Then those fellows will have some regard. At least they won't say, "Oh, we know all these things from Padma Purana, from Brahmavivata Purana. We've seen all these things. What is there more?" But when coloured by the Brahma Gyan of Sukadeva Goswami, it was received with rapt attention. He gave to their ears Bhagavat.
Continue.
Sukadeva Goswami has given us so many things, even Rasa Lila, Gopi Gita, Radharani's Vilap, Krishna's pastimes with his friends, Vatsalya Ras, but still, he is generally not considered to be established in the highest position of the rasa world.
So note that again. The flow is coming through Sukadev. He is chosen because it is necessary. There's a certain necessity is everything. A certain necessity has arisen. The Bhagavatam must be given. But who is assembled there? The mass of those assembled there are of the Brahmavadi category. And smart, there may be so many others also. And so a man of that will be respected by them and held in the highest esteem. If that person gives the Bhagavatam, then they will give attention to that. So Krishna selects this Sukadev. And he speaks the Bhagavatam, but he has no position in Krishna Lila. He has no standing in the world of rasa, but it flows through him. So this is a very mystical point. He has no connection himself, but the message he delivers is of the highest quality, ever given before. Nothing to match it in this world has ever matched the message up to that point. And of course, this is 4,500 years approximately before the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But up to that point, nothing had matched the gift, what Sukadev gave, what came from his mouth. Go ahead.
For some purpose, that rasa was given through him. But that does not mean that he has entered there and he is established there. For the particular service and purpose of the Lord, through him it was given to the world. Just as Pralapita Vakya, he does not know, though all these higher thoughts pass through him. He was a peon of those higher deliberations, but he himself has no permanent settlement in the highest quarter. We do not hear about that.
So Sridhara Maharaj says he was a peon. He was a peon of those higher deliberations. What is the, just for those of you who don't know, that's old school English. That's the very menial servant, the peon.
Delivers messages between office to office. Generally.
Yes, the office peon, or one may have a peon in the house. Just the most menial servant, but he delivers the highest message. You see. All right. So you have the 5 points here, Giri. You want to go over those?
Sure.
One.
Yeah. Sridhar Maharaj says above that one.
Yeah. So we're summarizing what Sridhar Maharaj has said in 5 points.
Yeah. Number 1, Sukadeva Goswami is not found to be in the highest position of Krishna Lila. 2, that Shukadev may not have his stand in that plane. 3, that we don't find that Shukadev has got his permanent position in Radha Krishna's Leela. 4, that Shukadev came from the unseen and entered into it again. 5, that his delivery of Bhagavatam was as some machine, a loudspeaker, something like that.
So let me mention about number 4, that Sukadeva came from the unseen and entered into it again. So let me paraphrase that. Sukadeva Goswami came from the unknown. Nothing is known about him. Simply there's this parrot, enters the mouth of Vyasadeva, Vyasadev's wife. He takes birth. And when, as Sukadeva, and after speaking the Bhagavatam, he went away into the forest. His guru, his father, his guru, his Param Guru, Narada Muni, was there. He didn't care to even come before them and offer his namaskars or obeisances. He simply turned around and went back into the forest and vanished from history, was never seen again. Nobody ever heard of him again. He doesn't appear somewhere else in another Purana doing something else. He came from nowhere and he vanished back into nowhere. And he is the classic example of the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. And both Srila Sridhara Maharaj have mentioned this. This means this was the conception of Bhakti Siddhanta and also Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. Do we have any more to read on that? Anything from Bhaktivinoda? I think we have a few more things.
Yes, Bhaktivinoda, we have a quote. Yeah.
Yes, so want to continue on with that?
Yeah. In chapter 22 of Jaiva Dharma, Thakur Bhaktivinoda confirms that Shukadev was the recipient of the causeless mercy of Krishna. Quote, the mercy of Krishna is of 3 types, Vachika, Alokadana, and Hardha. Instances where Krishna rewards all 3 types of mercy are found in the scriptures. In Vachika, Krishna simply promises his devotee by word of mouth, and immediately that all benedicting crest jewel embodiment of divine bliss and transcendentally willful bhakti that seeks only Krishna to serve awakens as bhav within the heart. An example of Alokadana Kripa are the sages of Dandakaranya forest, who had never directly seen the Supreme Lord, but as soon as they beheld the Lord, their hearts were flooded with bhava and bhakti, simply by the mercy of the Lord. Bhava, which spontaneously sprouts within the heart, as in the case of Srila Sukadeva Goswami, is due only to the causeless mercy of the Lord, or Harda Kripa.
So that seems quite clear. But, when one wants to argue, one can argue about anything. But here we have previous acharyas, exalted personalities, all saying the same thing. That Sukadeva Goswami is the example of the causeless mercy of the Lord. And nowhere, simply nowhere, does any previous acharya, Jiva Goswami, in all his extensive writings, in Gaur Ganadesh Dipika, or in Radha Krishna Ganadesh Dipika, where so many identities of the devotees are revealed, who they are in Krishna Lila, there is no mention anywhere that Sukadeva Goswami is the pet parrot of Srimati Radharani. But I would probably say that within the last 60 days, this story, who Sukadeva Goswami is, as being the parrot of Radharani, has been narrated in at least one Srimad Bhagavatam class, if not multiple Bhagavatam classes, both in the Gaudiya Math also. Our regular listeners will, sometimes you hear me speaking very highly of the Gaudiya Math. And certainly it is a very distinguished organization of Vaishnavas. But the fact is that this story of the false identity of Sukadeva Goswami has also entered into the Gaudiya Math, not just into ISKCON or into the Hare Krishna movement in general or here and there. But one thing that we did find out, remember, Giri, in our research, is that we went around and we probed some of the, Sahajiya communities around Vrindavan, which Gaudiyas considers Sahajiya communities at Radhakund and Govardhan and around the town. And when we gave them this story, they verified that part 1 is true, part 2 is true, and their comment was, part 3 sounds like somebody has invented this story to try and appear very rasic.
Right.
So that was hilarious. That even your traditional Sahajiya communities were saying, no, this is a total concoction. It sounds like somebody's just trying to up the game and get really rasic.
Right.
And
there was only one Sahajiya group that we found,
and that seemed to be the origin of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Want to tell us who that was?
That was the known as the Ativadis of Rupa Kaviraj. They're situated in Vrindavan. There's 2 groups of Ativadis. One is Orissa. That's a different group. The second group called Ativadi is the followers of Rupa Kaviraj, who was a sort of a Gaudiya Vaiṣṇava during the 16th century. He was actually a contemporary of Vishwanath Chakravarti.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a Dikshit disciple of Krishna Charan Chakravarti. He studied Bhagavatam under one Mukunda Das, who was a very well-known Vaishnava at the time, associate of Srinivasa Acharya. And it says he made a grave offense to the great Vaishnavi Srimati Krishna Priya Thakurani. I believe she was the daughter of Srinivas Thakur. One day all the Vaishnavas assembled to hear Rupa Kaviraj recite the Bhagavatam. Before he began, Krishna Priya Thakurani arrived and the devotees offered her all respects. Rupa Kaviraj, however, did not show her any respect. During his recital of Bhagavatam, Rupa Kaviraj noticed she was chanting and he became disturbed at this. With anger, he asked Krishna Priya Thakurani, how is it possible to be doing 2 things simultaneously? It is very disturbing to me to see how you are chanting while I'm reciting the Bhagavatam. With great humility, the Thakurani replied, it is simply the habit of my tongue to chant continuously. It doesn't impede my hearing at all. Hearing this, Rupa Kaviraj sat back and fumed in anger. From this moment he was ruined. He offended Krishna Priya Thakurani. Then later he made offences to his guru, his Param Guru, and other Vaishnavas. Then Rupa Kaviraj became more and more proud of his learning and was ultimately robbed of the results of his spiritual advancement. So later, I think Hemalata Thakurani, who was the leader of the community at that time, she became so incensed by this Rupa Kaviraj, she broke his neck beads and only one strand remained. And therefore, now the followers of this Ativadi Apasampradaya only wear one strand of neck beads.
So he became really a Maha-aparati,
Yes.
a really a great offender, this Rupa Kaviraj. And that's where we trace this story.
Mm-hmm.
And the Ativadis are mentioned in that verse, Aula Baula, I forget the whole verse.
About it, yeah.
Yeah, the verse that Bhaktivinoda quotes, which is originally written by Tota Ramdas, which describes the 13 Upasampradayas. Prabhupada also quoted that verse. This Ativadi Sampradaya, started by Rupa Kaviraj, is amongst those original 13 Sahajiya Sampradayas, Upasampradayas, and that's the only place where we could find this part of the story that the parrot, that Sukadeva Goswami is actually the parrot of Srimati Radharani. Mm-hmm. So it's ironic that the people, the devotees we were discussing with, they branded us as, or me, as a Maha-aparati, but the story they're narrating comes from one of the original Maha-aparatis.
But you know what the funny thing is that when I approached one of the leaders of this Ativadi sect in Vrindavan and asked him what is the Shastric evidence for Shukadev being the parrot of Radharani, he gave me the same reference that this other group does from Ananda Vrindavan Champu. Yes, and it's not there.
But it's not there. It doesn't exist. No. All right, so that's the story of Sriya Suka. I've said it already 5 times over, so I guess I don't have to summarize anymore.
Sure.
in the links or in the description below, we will put a link to this article, which we read extensively from today. There is more material in the article, and so if you have the time and this subject interests you, you can read that article. So one of the grand takeaways from this this discussion is that the paramount necessity is to follow very closely our previous acharyas. And it's better to be on hold and not go there than it is to rush ahead and go into realms and all these things which are unbona fide. And but the question is, well, what's the harm? A little bit of sweetness in the story. Well, it might not be true, but well, that means we have no taste for reality. Reality has no taste for conjecture. Reality has no taste for speculation. These things become rasabas, they become aparad, and they just become completely mundane. Think, what's the example? A little bit of salt spoils the sweet rice. You see, or sand in the sweet rice. So these false narrations, Mahaprabhu was so sensitive to what he would hear that Swarup Damodar, his secretary, would hear anything that he was going to be, anything that's going to be read, or any kind of a story or anything, he would hear it first. And there are examples where many devotees would think, oh, such a nice story, Mahaprabhu will like this. But when Swarup Damodar would hear the story, he would find a very small point of upasiddhanta or rasabas or just some mundanity. And he would not allow that story or what poem or whatever it was to be read to Mahaprabhu because it would create a great disturbance in him. So neophytes, it's like children. I've seen children eating. This one sticks in my mind. They make this surf wax today for surfboards that smells like candy. It's kind of like some of those soaps that you can buy nowadays. They're dangerous to put around kids. They smell so good you want to eat them. And so there's a film of this little kid. He's eating surf wax, that he found on the beach, a little blob of surf wax, and it's mixed in sand. But the kid doesn't have the experience to understand. He just smells it. It smells good, and after that, he eats it, mixed with the sand. So neophytes, we tend to be like this little kid. We are attracted by the smell, but we don't have the experience. We don't have the higher consciousness to immediately understand what is not true, what is false, what is rasabas, or what is just simply mundane. So it's very, very important just to stick to that which we know is mundane. And when there's a question, then it's better to put it on hold until we can get a verification.
I think you once said that the so-called sweetness of these stories isn't nectar, it's aspartame.
Yeah, right. Aspartame is an artificial sweetener, for those of you who don't know, which is carcinogenic, known to cause cancer and brain tumors. So what was there something there we were going to read about the last thing, about the pig-headed?
There was. Shall I read that?
Well, I can't remember what it was. Yeah, if you think we should read that, read it. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up.
Some contemporary Vaishnavas are so confused regarding higher and lower topics that they prefer the devotion of Sukadeva over that of great personalities such as Prahlad Maharaj and Advaita Acharya, saying that such personalities cannot give Krishna Prem. They speak of Krishna Prema as though it were a handout from the public welfare services, and all one need do is just take initiation from the Rasika. This understanding is indeed pitiful. Such a mentality springs from the deepest ignorance born of Amar Guru Jagat Guru and smacks of pig-headedness and false egotism.
So, just for a little touch of humor here, we have a picture of what we think is represents pig-headedness. I'll just put that on the screen. So this is the pig-headed devotee. They cannot understand what reality is and what is the necessity of remaining close to the lotus feet of our acharyas and not wandering off into the world of speculation and mental imaginations.
Something just came to my mind, if I may just mention
Please.
that, is one of the points that they make to prove the identity of Sukadeva Goswami with this parrot is in the Bhagavatam. It says, Sri Suka Uvacha. Sri mean Radharani, Shuka mean parrot. But I'd like to add that if you look through the Bhagavatam in the 7th canto, it also says Sri Hiranyakashipu Uvacha as well.
They interpret the Sri. They say, oh, Sri means Radha. So Sri Suka means Radha's parrot.
Right.
But yes, Sri is used a lot of places. Was it Sri Hiranyakashipu?
Yes.
So does that mean that Hiranyakashipu is the consort of Radha? See, the problem with these rasics is, first problem is, they're not rasic at all.
Mm-hmm.
They're wannabes.
Yes.
They're wannabes. They want to be rasic. They want to be this, but they don't want to pay the price, you see. Mm-hmm. They don't want to pay the actual price. They actually don't want to go through the step-by-step advancement. They want to jump over everything and just relish the nectar, Prabhu.
Yep.
But you can't get there in that manner.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get there in that manner. All right, so that's the story of Sriya Suka. Giri, thank you very much for your research.
Thank you.
And, well, in the last two videos, we had a sound problem. And we hope to have solved that problem, but we'll know here in a few minutes when we upload this video to see if we had any previous sound problems, which the video cut out once for 5 minutes, another time for 10 minutes. So hopefully we've solved that problem. If we haven't, then you probably won't be hearing from us again for a couple more weeks while we try to get to the bottom of the sound problem. But if the sound problem is solved, then we plan to get back on schedule and make at least one broadcast a week for Let's Talk. And part of solving that problem was Giri Maharaj and I are actually in the same building now. We're both in Vermont, in Essex Junction, outside of Burlington, Vermont. Previously, I was in Mexico, and the internet was a little sketchy there from time to time. That may have been the problem. We hope that my being up here in Vermont, us both being in the same building, that's going to make for better transmission. So thank you all very much for watching. Hare Krishna.